Thank you for joining us in our second year of the NeoCon Talk series. These talks are 20-minute conversations on a range of topics from a variety of speakers from all over the globe. Welcome to day 2. Thank you to our sponsors Formica, 9 to 5 Seating, Dauphine, Garden on the Wall, and Via Seating. Also right behind us, we have a Beatrix coffee and pastry set up, so if you guys need to refuel, feel free. As well as in between the talks, we're gonna be having some workplace trivia with prizes, so you guys can get some vouchers to go get some free coffee and snacks, so be sure to stay around for that. And first up on our talk series is Sensory Processing and Neurodiversity in 2024 with HOK's Olivia Danielson-Veed. Welcome, Olivia.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces, new friends, old friends here. I really appreciate you taking your time to come see this talk. It's something I think is extremely important, and I'm so glad it's getting more traction in the market. I know that your time, especially at NeoCon, is very precious, so I hope you all learn something today. And with this curiosity, technology issues down here. We'll just keep on going here. With this topic, it's really all about curiosity, or it started with curiosity. You know, curiosity around how we interact with space, how we interact with people, the environment around us. So I invite you to kind of lean into that curiosity with me, because for HOK, it all started with a simple question about 8 years ago. And how do we accommodate neurodivergence in the workplace? And we got that question in a client presentation, and we had an answer, but we didn't know if it was really the right answer. So we got curious about it. We leaned into that and really started to do some research, get some metrics around that. And since then, we've published many surveys, many works here, white papers. We've developed CEUs, and really have just embraced this topic of neurodiversity, neuro-inclusion, and sensory processing, how you interact with the space around us. So also since that, in that 8 years, we've also kind of expanded this into all of our vertical markets. So it did start in workplace, but we know that people are experiencing the environment around us in everyday life. So that looks like, you know, sports and rec centers, science and technology, airports, we do a lot with that, and also our justice vertical market. So those have been some really important expansions for us. And we know that everyone's brain functions differently. That's nothing really new. So inherently, we are all, in a way, neurodiverse, right? But we are not all neurodivergent. So being neurodivergent is something that might be annoying to me, might be something very debilitating to somebody else, and in that how we process sensory stimuli there. So we don't want to water down that term, neurodiverse, neurodiverse versus neurodivergent. So in addition, here are some other conditions for neurodivergent conditions. So we have autism, ADHD, we have dyslexia, which is trouble reading, dyspraxia, trouble with balance, dyscalculia, trouble with math, dysgraphia, trouble writing, and then Asperger's, Tourette's, also Parkinson's, just to name a few. And we're doing more work to understand how all of that comes into play into society, right? So between 1 in 5 people are neurodivergent, but only about 50% know that. So that's kind of a staggering statistic, right? So we probably have folks in this room who identify as being neurodivergent, and they're here today because they want to feel seen and heard, and we love that. But there's also probably some people here that don't know that they are neurodivergent, and they are curious about that, thinking maybe this is something that I should be thinking about. And for the rest of you all, since we are design professionals, we are here today to understand how we can make the built environment function in the best way possible for this 1 in 5 individuals. But not all impairments are the same as well. So we have some that are visible to the eye. You can, some might be in a wheelchair, they might have a cane or something of the sort. These might be temporary or permanent impairments. It might also be situational. So, but in that, 70% of disabilities are invisible. So in no way can we judge somebody from the outside and know what their, disability might be. And I think that's a really important statistic to kind of keep in mind. And within that, employed workers with disabilities are at a record high right now of over 22%. And that is really attributed to certain companies have recruiting techniques and want to recruit neurodivergent individuals. And that is, really important to be able to promote these individuals in a society that supports them as well. And it's estimated that 25% lives with a disability. So you can tell between those two percentages, they are still kind of underrepresented in the workforce in general. And on top of all of that, there's still a stigma, although it is, waning, a stigma about identifying yourself and having a disability. So where this physical, cognitive, and social exclusion happens, it can occur at a point of interaction between the individual and the environment. And where that misalignment happens is where that disadvantage occurs. So, and that last quote was really from the World Health Organization. And so this is coming from, all sorts of organizations, really digging into this. And we as designers have an extreme influence on that environment. So we really want to make sure that we're being responsible individuals there. And so this was a quote from an autistic a participant in one of our surveys. And it says, "We are fresh water and salt water. Put us in fresh water and we function just fine. Put us in salt water, we struggle to survive." And I thought that was just like, wow, kind of knocks you over the head, right? So, in that environment that we control, that we help create, we really have the ability to either make or break it for someone in their work environment, at the airport, in a hospital, any kind of setting that people see themselves in. So to understand that, we need to understand those sensory thresholds. So we have this kind of spectrum here from from hypersensitive to hyposensitive, and then neurotypical in between. So someone who's hypersensitive, they want less stimuli, they want things a little bit more neat, orderly, organic, clean, kind of less color. They need things to be more predictable. And less background noise is better for them as well. Whereas someone who's hyposensitive, just think of kind of amping up all those senses. So more color, more saturation of that color, texture, things that they can touch, feel. Being able to walk and move around and fidget is also very important. And thinking about things, unpredictable circulation paths, unpredictable textures, visual interest is all very important. So for the overstimulated, someone that's hypersensitive, having something that's a little bit more orderly. So for all of those bullet points we were talking about, this is kind of what some of those spaces could look like, right? And even when you see some of the color, it's very intentional. So it's done in very intentional ways. These are very clean lined, really bringing in those biophilic elements. That's going to be important for both of them, but also you can see it here being used as the color in a space even. And then for the understimulated, you just kind of amping up all of that again. So you're seeing texture, color, energy. There's a lot of like interactive elements, right? Being able to weave those into the spaces. So we understand and experience that space through our senses. And you're seeing 8 up here and probably wondering, where did you get these other 3? I only learned about 5 in school. Same here. So you see the ones that are that you already know, but then there's some extras here. So interoceptive, which is how you feel within your body. Proprioceptive, how you feel with how your body feels in relation to other people, objects, dividers, built environments. And then vestibular, which is dealing with coordination and balance. So, as an organization, we've really tried to get a lot more data points. There isn't a whole lot out there in the market right now, so we're really looking at understanding the space and people that are in those spaces. So we developed several studies and surveys. So to do that, we're going to focus on 2 here today with a teaser for a third. So back in 2022, we did a neurodivergent research study with Genius One, and we wanted to focus on some underrepresented groups. So we know that, especially in the neurodiverse population and what's being researched, it's mostly around children and men. So in this one, we wanted to focus on female and non-binary individuals, and also people in that working age group of about 30 to 60. So you're seeing that represented here in some of these graphics. And then it further broke it down between hyper and hyposensitive, who kind of identifies as that. And you're seeing more people are hypersensitive, meaning they need less stimuli, than hyposensitive. And then within that breakdown as well, you're seeing ADHD, autism, and dyslexia numbers here. So you're seeing kind of how that is pulled through. And then also, I think what's really interesting is 57% of people had mixed neurotypes. So some who are maybe hypersensitive to sound, but hyposensitive to smell, for example. And then in 2023, we actually got a grant, the Wonder Grant, and used our own HOK colleagues as kind of guinea pigs, if you will. And we had 74 individuals participate. And what we did here was, kind of seeing the same breakdown. You're also seeing how the breakdown of ADHD, autism, dyslexia compares to the US average. So you're kind of seeing that pulled through. And then also 90% expressed having some hypersensitivity. So I think that's like a huge number. It could be that, we're designers, architects, and we do have maybe more awareness around it than others. So that's something to kind of keep in mind with that 90%. But 73% also express some hyposensitivity. So what you're seeing there is that, to me, how I read that is, there's still some misalignments, right? There's still some improvements that we can make, certainly. And also we have to remember that we do have a heightened sense of all the senses at the moment, heightened sensitivity to, for me, proprioceptive, especially coming out of the pandemic. So we went home, we desensitized dramatically, and then we were brought back into the space that we were in previously. And we were expected to kind of just keep going as we used to, right? But we learned that, especially, anything with sound, whether we needed more or less of it, was huge. And then also how we interacted with each other, and how we felt, what made us feel safe, So I know for myself, I used to jam in on the subway train, like in the car, the L car, and if there were 1 million people in there, I didn't care, I was gonna squeeze in there anyways. And now, if there's 1 million people, yeah, we have some heads nodding. If we have 1 million people in there, I'm gonna just let that go. I'll catch the next one. I don't need to be, jammed in there with everyone. It just doesn't make me feel safe anymore. So I think we're really getting to understand what makes us feel safe. As designers, we're understanding on how to get that information out of others too, on what makes them feel safe, so that these spaces really adjust for those findings. And then we also have a breakdown of different populations as far as ages, right? So we have people in their 20s. You can see 71% identify as neurotypical, whereas for people in their 60s, 95% identify as neurotypical. And again, this could be they don't know that they're neurodivergent, right? There wasn't as much studies out there, right, that there are now. So very thankful that we're able to kind of be building upon this and also destigmatizing these as well. So in these sensory inputs, you can see that a neurodivergent population and a mixed neurotype population have the same top 2 stimuli that are bothersome to them. So we have the auditory and the visual. So that's important because in that hypothesis of thinking and understanding that, people who are neurodivergent and people who are neurodiverse or have mixed neurotypes really do need the same things, but it's just the heightened sensitivity to one or more of those inputs. And then also some things that people are hyposensitive to would be visual and auditory. And again, visual and auditory were number 1 and 2 on both of those, hyper and hyposensitive. So I just find that fascinating because that's something that we can really key into so that we kind of are keeping an eye on that. So some of these challenges in the environments, we have sound, temperature, lights, anything that you can create some user controls around are going to be very beneficial. Temperature, obviously, that's a tough one. Even getting off the elevator on this floor, I was like, wow, it is cold in here. Yeah. So, temperatures were kind of set from back in the 50s, 60s with men and who wore suits. Not even looking around today, not seeing many men in suits. So, needing to kind of understand how we can make that a little bit more approachable for everyone. And then we talked about this, the number of people and the proximity to others. We used to just kind of have all hands meeting spaces, designing all hands meeting spaces, and having as many people as we can in there. Now, a lot of times what we're doing is kind of creating like a decentralized model where you can have an all hands area available to people and they can go there, but you can also broadcast it to other areas that have less people than as well. So someone can go to some of these more decentralized areas to be able to experience that in a way that feels more comfortable to them. Also, enclosed versus open spaces, people actually feel better in an open space. It's a little, they can see things coming at them. It's kind of a little more of a survival mechanism, right? And they're able to, kind of have more predictability as to what's around them. So, and then also finally, patterns, color, and texture are also extremely important too, as you layer all of those in there. So some of our top design strategies, we have the neurodivergent population and their top 13 design strategies, and then also a mixed neurotype. So what's fascinating about this is that all of these are the same for both groups. So from a neurodivergent perspective, they have the same top 13 as someone who is a mixed neurotype. That said, they're in different order, so the priority is different. But when you design for the extreme, you still benefit the mean. So when you're keeping an eye on those hypersensitive areas, hyposensitive areas, you're still benefiting everyone in between that on that very big spectrum that we were looking at previously. But in order for that to be successful, there's 2 more kind of legs to that stool, that 3-legged stool approach. You have the design approach. You also have an operational approach, and I'll kind of leave these up here. I'll let you read through them. There's an operational support that needs to be baked into that. We have control over the built environment, and we can do a lot with that, but also need some operational support with that, as well as offering individual adjustments. So helping people understand how they can interact with the space, maybe some things that they can do on their own to help them interact with the space better. And that all is very, very important. So designing for inclusion, how do we get there? So this is kind of a roadmap that we go over with our clients of how do we get to that inclusion. I'm going to focus on numbers 5 and 6, really kind of that spatial awareness, the spatial zoning, and also the kit of parts. So when we're creating a kit of parts, we take a look at the 6 modalities of work. You're seeing right here, so concentrate all the way to convivial. And then there's that sensory threshold underneath there, and then also layering in the hyper versus hyposensitive areas. So there's different kit of parts for each of those, but they all play well together because they do benefit everyone. Someone that's hypersensitive could use a hyposensitive, area. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be exclusive, right? And then understanding the spatial sequencing. So really amping up the vibrancy and the energy at kind of the social areas, and then dissipating that as you go to the more quiet zones. So wanting to make sure you're keeping really good contact on that, and also that acoustic buffers, the visual barriers. Those are going to be huge as you have a space that's very beneficial to everyone. So these include, energy levels, activity, acoustics, and lighting. And then within that, this is kind of just an example floor plan, right, of how these kind of can work together, just as an example. So you can see that it's zoned very intentionally as these kind of all come together. And then we always say there's a compelling human case for being mindful, having safety front of mind, making sure people feel inclusive, heard, and seen. And also, we are no longer just designing environments, we are designing the experience. So we're really excited to look forward to next year, where right now with our Seattle office, we're doing a study where we're having everyone wear Fitbits, so it's tracking step counts, activity, stress levels, that sort of blood oxygen even, so we can understand how people are working in their space now. And we've been doing that for about 4 months. And then in July, they're moving into a brand new space that was designed with these neuro principles in mind. And then they're going to be tracked with those same metrics for another 4 months so that we have more data points. And we definitely look forward to sharing that with all of you next year. But it's something that we're just trying to find more and more ways to get these data points and be able to share with everyone so everyone can help interact with their environment and be successful in that. So I'm going to stay around for probably about half an hour or so, kind of in the periphery. So if anyone has any questions, I definitely welcome being able to talk to everyone. And I know that there's a lot of good talks coming up as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Olivia. So we will have a recording and recap on all of these talks as well on workdesign.com. You can get a free subscription, so that way you can be notified as soon as the videos are up. Next up at 2 p.m. is Why Include OTs in Your Inclusive Design Team with Francisco Lasta. See you guys in 10 minutes.